Make sure you do not skip these series. Make sure to go back to part 1 before watching this one, or it will not make sense.
Shalom, I'm Yehuda Yoro, and guess what? I'm back. Now, ladies and gentlemen, you already know this is part 12, ladies and gentlemen. That's right. This is part 12. Can you believe it? We've been going through this series. You all have been getting great understanding. We're going over all of these scriptures, all of these reasons on how the people who say that Joseph is a biological father is definitely incorrect. Now, listen, you can't skip parts. If you skip parts, you're not going to understand this series because I purposely broke these up into different segments. So you have to watch every single part. Now, as far as the seed videos go, this is the third part of the series. However, the video you're watching now was number 12. The last video I did was this one right here called The Virgin Birth, Seed Sperma of Joseph, the Keal shot, part 11. Well, this particular section, I'm going over Romans 1 and 3 as well. And I know he's going to watch these because Mahar had him watching these videos. And Mahar even agreed, if you're watching this, you tried to set me up and it backfired, my boy. So, Matthew 1, I wasn't talking about Mahar, I was talking about the brother who he had me on video with. So, I was going over Romans 1 and 3, and as you see, the word right here, Spermatos, David, Kata, etc. So, was going over that, and remember, well, before I kind of dive into what we're going over here, just know that November 18th, I started when doing this one here, the Virgin Birth, Greek and Hebrew grammar, the Keal shot, part 1. Then I doubled down and did part 2. Then I did part 3 of the video, part 4 of the video, part 5, part 6, part 7, as you see right here. Then I did part 8, part 9, I did part 10, part 11. Look at that, ladies and gentlemen. And right now, once again, you are now watching video 12. All right, so that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we're going to continue. If you have not seen the rest of the parts, then this is not going to make sense to you at all. Now, remember, ladies and gentlemen, when you look at Leviticus 15:16, we have here Vaish ki tezeh mimenu. All right, so if tezeh mimenu, go out from him, then we have this word here, shikvat zerah. Shikvat zerah, we've already established that zerah means seed. However, we have this makef here, ladies and gentlemen. That word here is connected to this word here is a construction. All right, so that being said, ladies and gentlemen, it is painting one idea, telling you the type of seed, shikvat zerah, which is what? Sexual seed. All right, now if you want to say it in the Greek language, for example, we have the Septuagint, we have here koite spermatos, all right, or spermatos. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, when we see the word spermatos, all right, or the root word, as you see right here, which is sperma. Let's go ahead and click on that.
Strong's G 4690, sperma.
So we've already gone over the fact that people only argue the root word instead of the actual inflected word, which is this word right here, which is also this word right here, ladies and gentlemen. So when the word spermatos or spermatos or spermatos, when it stands alone, it just means seed or lineage, if you will. But when you add this word here, koite, all right, let me click on that real quick.
Strong's G 2845, koite.
Now that lets me know the type of seed that this is talking about, ladies and gentlemen. So here is letting you know the male sperm, etc., the bed, if you will. So this is sexual seed, bed of seed. All right. So anytime somebody try to say, oh, well, seed of David, seed of Abraham, then always ask them, well, what is the word in the actual Greek text? Do not tell me it's sperma, because that's not the word there. It's spermatos. And when that word stands alone, it doesn't mean sexual seed, meaning a man and woman laid down. It just means lineage, offspring. All right. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's go back. For example, when you go to, before we do the Hebrews 2:16, here's an example. Remember we saw koite, all right, spermatos. No different from when I showed you here, ladies and gentlemen. Here goes the same word koite. Look at this. Let me click on it. This is the passage. Marriage is honorable and all, and the bed undefiled. We know nobody's going to dispute us talking about a sexual bed there. So here we go.
Strong's G 2845. Koite. Koite.
That's the same exact thing that we had just saw, ladies and gentlemen. Remember this, the male sperm, bed chambering. So the Bible in Greek and Hebrew has ways to signal us to let us know the type of sexual encounter, especially when it's talking about what you call sperma or sperm. So that word koite that we just saw, it has to be attached to sperma. That's how we know if it's talking about sexual seed. If it's not, then guess what, ladies and gentlemen? That is not talking about sexual seed. All right. So is Christ the seed of David? Yes, absolutely. But what type of seed is mentioned in the actual Bible? Not the root word sperma. No, that's not the word there. It's spermatos. All right. Or spermatos. Now, that being said, ladies and gentlemen, let's see anything else I want to show. All right. So look, for example, we go back to Hebrews 2. It says here, for verily he took not on him the nature of angels, but he took upon him the seed of Abraham. Verse 17, wherefore in all things it behoved him to be made like unto his brethren. That's another key that they go to as well. That he might be merciful and faithful high priest in things pertaining to the Most High, to make reconciliation with a sacrifice or propitiation or atonement for the sins of the people. All right. So it says, for in that he himself have what? Suffered, being what? Tempted or tested. He is able to succor them that are tempted. So the main thing that they hang on, of course, nature of angels. But the biggest thing here is the seed of Abraham, of course. And then, of course, being made like unto his brethren. That is the main argument that they bring. So we'll start here. And what we'll do is we'll kind of go through this, ladies and gentlemen. And remember, the key when we see sexual seed, ladies and gentlemen, sexual seed, ask yourself, I mean, not ask yourself, you will see koite spermatos. But if you don't, and you just see spermatos, ask yourself, well, how is this sexual seed if the word koite is not there? All right. So we have ugar depu, tongue twist, angelion, epilobomatai, aulai spermatos, abram epilobomatai. Now notice I never said koite spermatos. That's not there. That's not there. I wonder why. So we have gar depu, angelion, epilobantai, aulai, not koite, aulai, spermatos, or spermatos, abram, epilobantai again. We don't see the word that you all are looking for, that you should be hoping for, which would be koite spermatos, which someone you call the seed of copulation, sexual seed, bed of seed. We don't see that. So what we're finna do is we're finna go through this, ladies and gentlemen. And look, what I want you all to do is to have an open mind when we're going into this. Because again, you'll see that you've been lied to. You've been lied to. So look, we're going to go through this. And again, watch with an open mind. And once again, you've been lied to. So let's go ahead and get through it, ladies and gentlemen. All right. Hold on 1 second. 1 second. Let me show my screen. Virgin birth. Seed sperma of Joseph. All right, let's get to it. Hebrews 2:16 and 17. The virgin birth. The real context of Hebrews chapter 2. So I first want to say before diving into this, Hebrews chapter 2 is not about Joseph at all. It's not about human conception. It's not about sexual lineage. And it's not about physical sperm. That's the first thing where these brothers is going wrong. It's not about that at all. I also want to state that Hebrews 2 is about why the Messiah took on human nature, why he became flesh and blood, and how he qualifies as high priest in the things that belong to make him an atonement for the sins of Israel. And also it's about how he destroyed the devil, how he brings salvation. The purpose of the chapter is not to describe how he was conceived in the womb at all. Hebrews 2 describe why he needed a human body to die for Israel. That's the entire point. Nothing here talks about Joseph. Nothing here talks about sexual reproduction. Nothing here talks about conception. Nothing talks about literal semen at all. Nothing here even mentions Joseph or Mary, for that matter. Neither one of them are mentioned. That alone kills their doctrine even before we even get into what these verses even speaking about. Literally. So we have Hebrews 2:14, one of the main key verses before getting to 16 and 17. For as much as the children are partakers of flesh and blood, he also himself likewise took part of the same. Now, important. Flesh and blood is what? Human nature. All right, has nothing to do with Joseph at all. Took part, meaning what? He partook in human nature. It's not what you thinking. Not was created the human sperm at all. Not was generated by Joseph. Joseph isn't even mentioned, and neither is his birth. All right, keep that in mind. He's not mentioned, and neither is his birth at all. So make sure you all understand that before even diving into this text here. All right, so the Greek text in this passage here, it says kekoinoakin, and then we have this word here, meteskin. So these words means partakers in, or aka shared in, and then meteskin means participated in. All right, so that being said, ladies and gentlemen, it means he shared in the human condition, not came from human seed, which we'll be discussing later, of course. This isn't speaking about conception at all. This verse is about his body, not his conception. How do we know? Because when we look at flesh and blood verbiage, this shows how blood and flesh is dealing with his blood shedding so that we can be forgiven. The life of the flesh is in the blood. We already know that's Leviticus 17:11. That makes atonement for the soul just like Christ did. So notice the key words surrounding him: blood and death, or destroying Satan. Hebrews 2 and 15, it says, and delivered them who through fear of death, we are all their lifetime subject to bondage. So that being said, so we should deliver those who fear dying, which means by him dying, Christ, he would set free those who were in submission to slavery of all of their lives because they were afraid of dying. All right. He wasn't, though. This reminds me of Romans 8 and 15 and Galatians 5 and 1. All right. So far, have we read anything about Mary and Joseph and anything about conception right now? No. All right. And then keep in mind, be patient, because I'm going to be breaking this down even more precise as we get through this. But right now, think of this as a seed planter, but not a seed planter as in sexual seed. Hebrews 2:16, the one that they twist. For verily he took not on him the nature of angels, but it took on him the seed of Abraham. So before breaking this down, we as virgin birth believers don't say anything about an angel in his birth, with the exception of an angel speaking to both parents, which you all agree with as well, because the text says it. However, let's read this one more time and digest it correctly. For verily, or truly, he took not on him the nature of angels, but he took on him the seed of Abraham. And this is what counts. False doctrine falls like the walls of Jericho, because they don't understand Greek or Greek grammar or the actual context. The Greek word for took on, epilabonatai, as we had talked about earlier when I read it in the text. All right, this does not mean he took sperm from Joseph. This does not mean he literally, it does not mean he literally, that he took literally semen from Abraham's line. Think about that. From 1,900 years to 2,000 years from Abraham to the birth of Christ, which means this can't be talking about literal sperm. He didn't mention Joseph, nor did he say the seed of Abraham through Joseph either. It didn't say he was biologically produced by a man. Joseph was impregnated Mary. It didn't say that. The text never says Joseph begat Christ in Matthew 1:16 either. Think about that. Mary is an offspring of Abraham, and again, it was about 1,900 years to 2,000 years from Abraham to Christ, which means that this proves alone that seed in this verse means offspring, descendants, not literal semen from Abraham's sperm coming inside of Mary, knowing that it is Joseph's ex-wife. That would have been adultery. Again, this is where camps collapse because they don't understand the Greek or the context. The Greek word for took on actually means to lay hold of, to help. That's big right there. Assist and rescue. We're gonna be going into this. And remember, I ain't even scratched the surface yet. It also means to embrace, to grasp, hold for deliverance, to help. All right. So, in the broader context, it's emphasizing that Yeshua took on human nature not just for the sake of us, but to help and to save us. So the idea of laying hold of or taking hold of is deeply connected to that purpose of redemption and help. So he is helping us. Similar words are used in other passages like Hebrews 8 and 9, Mark 8 and 23, Acts 17 and 19. All you gotta do is look these things up. Look the words up. You'll see. Often carrying that same rich meaning of taking hold for a purpose. Whether it's to help, to rescue, or to bring about deliverance of some sort. The same thing that Christ did concerning us. The same Greek word, all right, for this word for took on is again mentioned in these chapters and verses. Hebrews 8, 9, Mark 8, 23, Acts chapter 17, verse 19, and never means to impregnate or to be birthed by seed and sexually. He did not lay hold to rescue angels, but he laid hold of the seed of Abraham, aka Israel, to save them. This is about redemption, salvation, who he came to rescue, the covenant, the promise to Abraham, not conception, not Joseph, not human sperm. This verse is literally about who he came to help, not how he was conceived. Now let's break this down grammatically to show it's no way, shape, form, or fashion is never ever been about proving that Christ was born from no Joseph. Grammatically, I'm gonna shut that down. The verb itself, epilabantai. All right, epilabanamai. So we have this word here. When you look this up, it is middle voice. All right, middle voice. To seize, take hold of, to grasp, to help, rescue, support, or to attain. Now, real quick. All right. So, that being said, ladies and gentlemen, what did I want to show you? Yeah, here we go. Boom. Epilabanamai. All right. Look at this. To seize, for help, injury, attainment, or any other purpose. Catch, lay hold on. See that? Look at that. Epilabanamai. See that? So, which is the root word, ladies and gentlemen. So, that being said, here we go. All right. So, hopefully you all are following along. Notice it said it is middle, present, or middle deponent, if you will. Passive deponent, indicative. Passive, middle. All right. See that? Passive or middle deponent, indicative, factual. So, that being said, let's go back. Notice we see that. Let's go back. Critical observation. The verb never means to begat. It never means to generate. It never means to biologically produce. It never means conceive. It never means to transmit literal sperm. Greek has very clear verbs for biological generation. Ganao, which means to begat, which is the root word in the verb, ganasin. So then we have the word tikto, to give birth. All right. Then we have the word spitero, to sow seed biologically though. There's no sexual grammar indicators to tell me that a man and a woman laid together to cause the birth of Christ. There is no sexual grammar indicators. So we don't see koite spermatos or koite spermatos. We don't see that at all. All right. So epilabanamai is not one of them. So grammar kill shot one. If the author wanted to say Yeshua was biologically generated from Abraham's physical seed as his sperm, or of course through Joseph, this verb would be linguistically wrong. The middle deponent voice, as I just got done showing you. Guess what, ladies and gentlemen? This is used for your virgin birth believers. Middle voice means what? The subject acts with personal involvement. Often carries the idea of taking hold for one's own purpose. Frequently used for rescue, assistance, or deliberate identification. So the meaning is not seed was transmitted into him. It was not literal sperm caused Christ to be born. It was not Christ has a biological father. It was not Mary and Joseph had sexual relations, but instead he deliberately took hold of or identified with or rescued. This is why so many translations say he helps, he takes hold of, his concern is for. The middle voice excludes passive biological reception. So guess what, ladies and gentlemen? Let me show you when I talked about other translations. Let's look at NIV real quick. All right. Notice it says right here, for surely it is not angels he helps. Guess what? The Greek text backs that up. It backs that up for help. Let's click on another one. You see this? To help angels. He came to help the descendants of Abraham, to rescue them. Let's look at ESV. You see this? For sure it's not angels that he helps, but he helps the offspring of Abraham. You see that? Let's look at the YLT. All right. Look at this. Message he doeth lay hold on, but the seed of Abraham he layeth hold. No, let's look at NET. Look at this. For his concern is not for angels, but he is concerned for Abraham's descendants. You see that? Amplified version, I think. Look at this. We all know Christ does not take hold of the fallen angels to give them a helping hand. They go to where help. You see that? He does take hold of. This all means to help. That's what this means, ladies and gentlemen. So let's go back to what I had just said. And this is what I get from the actual Greek text. This is what I get for took hold on. Epilabanatai. That literally means help, rescue. Literally. So, as I just said, this is why, let me make this bigger right here. Hold on, let me make this bigger for y'all. This is why why so many translations say he helps, he takes hold of, his concern is for. Middle voice excludes passive biological reception. If this were about sperm or birth mechanics, grammatically you would expect passive voice or genesis. All right. Genesis noun, which refers to the concept of generational birth, either one, or genao verb construction in the active voice, which explicitly means to beget or to generate biologically. None of those appear in Hebrews 2:16 in the Greek text, which lets us know this is not about anything sexual in the sense of a man and woman ever laying down to conceive Christ at all. Instead, the verb is middle voice, which indicates personal involvement or purpose, not biological production or physical reception. Greek uses active and passive forms very deliberately when birth or begetting is intended, and those grammatical signals are completely absent there, ladies and gentlemen. So, if you want to talk about sexual seed, it will be very intended. Koite spermatos or koite spermatos. So let me be a little more sharper for you, brothers. The middle voice here indicates personal involvement or intention rather than passive biological reception. Grammatically, if this were about a purely biological or a passive event, you'd expect a passive voice form, which is not used here, ladies and gentlemen. Let me emphasize that both the middle and the absence of a passive voice construction makes it clear that there is no indication of Joseph being the father. Now, when it comes to the actually laying down, there's nothing there in the active voice. So in other words, I'm locking down that the grammar itself rules out a passive biological interpretation. That should really help my virgin birth believers and remove any wiggle room. First, on what I meant and what I did not mean. Earlier I said middle voice excludes passive biological reception. Don't celebrate now. I was speaking specifically about Hebrews 2 and 16, not Matthew 1 and 16. These are two different verbs, different voices, meaning active and passive. There's different constructions and different theological points or doctrinal points. So when it comes to knowing Greek grammar, it separates them cleanly. For example, epilabonatai versus egenete, as we see right here. All right. So Hebrews 2 and 16, the verb here, epilabonatai, is middle deponent. The topic, it means to rescue, help, and identification. Versus Matthew 1 and 16, egenete, passive, birth event. And remember the passive, well, we'll talk a little bit more about that later. Remember, we've already went over this in part 1 of my video, in at least the 3 parts. Why passive voice would matter for biology. Here's the grammar principle. This is where confusion usually happens for my brothers. In Greek biology, related language, i.e., what we look at in Matthew 1 and 16, or sexual verb language, active voice, the begatter, meaning the father acts, i.e., it would have been like Joseph begat. All right. And as we see here, Joseph begat Jesus would have been written, but it's not. And then that root word of egenete, of egenesin would have been ganao, and it would have been in the active voice. Now, passive voice, the one born receives the action. That's why Matthew 1 and 16 says Jesus was born. Sidebar for my virgin birth believers. I got to say these few things before we get back to Hebrews 2. Brothers, grammatically, you can emphasize that the passive voice shows that the one born is not the source of the action. All right. I'm going to repeat that. You can show them that the passive voice, meaning in Matthew 1 and 16, when it says egenete, all right, for born or was born, that's in the passive voice. And that shows that the one born, i.e. Christ, is not the source of the action. In other words, Yeshua's birth wasn't caused by Joseph or even by Mary. Instead, because the passive voice, it was something that happened to him, making it clear that the birth was a divine act rather than a biological one. This is what the passive voice proves, and this is why many camps don't want to deal with the Greek grammar, or even the Hebrew grammar for that matter, because it goes against their doctrine. So tell all non-virgin birth believers, in the passive voice, the one born receives the action. That's what you tell them. And you can confidently tell them that. You can confidently tell them in the passive voice, the one born receives the action, meaning that neither Joseph nor Mary caused it. Instead, Yeshua was brought into being by divine intervention. That way it's crystal clear to a non-virgin birth believer and leaves no room for confusion grammatically. They will not challenge you on this because it will force them to have to lean on the grammar. Because think about it, they're going to have to try to disprove it. But it'll also force them to lean on the grammar, and at that point, they will be disproven. So the next step they have is escape. Some way, somehow, they will not want to challenge you grammatically because they know that they can't beat you grammatically. Remember, when you understand the grammar, then you understand the real intent of the author. When you understand the grammar, then you understand the real intent of the author. So yes, birth statements are normally passive, but now we know the Bible tells us who is the source in Matthew 1 and 16. The feminine singular source destroys their argument. Why? Because it grammatically removes Joseph. This is unavoidable. This is the unavoidable grammatical fact. Ex haste. All right. From whom? Meaning, or out of her. All right. It is in the feminine singular. There is only one feminine singular pronoun preceding in the verse. That means it refers to the noun that comes before and is connected to a pronoun. So in simpler terms, it's basically the word that a pronoun refers back to, which in this case is who? Marias. Now remember, ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about Matthew 1 and 16. So it's talking about Marias in this context, or Mary. Don't let nobody trick you out of this. Don't let nobody get away with this. Don't let nobody change the topic. They have to deal with this grammatically before y'all able to move on. So Joseph is not feminine. He is masculine. So that means he's grammatically excluded. He's masculine, not feminine. So again, he's out of the picture. Syntactically cut off from the birth verb, which is in the passive voice. And that means that this does not apply in any way his involvement. This is making it clear and direct that the birth of Christ is entirely separate from Joseph's role. That is why your elders won't touch the grammar, because they will not be able to prove the grammar wrong without rewriting the Bible. If Joseph were the biological father, then it would be in the active voice and not the passive voice. Remember, his role in there was called what? Husband. So the grammar in the passive voice does not say Joseph is the father. It says Jesus was born from Mary alone, and it's in the feminine singular. All right. So as you see here, Hayes. All right. Singular feminine, relative pronoun, genitive, singular feminine, as I just showed you. The agent is deliberately unstated. This is exactly what you expect if the agent is God and not man. Let me be a little more direct with you, all grammatically, for that checkmate. Matthew 1 and 16 grammar, checkmate. In Matthew 1 and 16, and this is going to be relevant for Hebrews 2 and 16, by the way. In Matthew 1 and 16, the Greek relative pronoun haste, all right, is doing all the work. Notice the screenshot from the Blue Letter Bible, all right, is now the non-vertebrate believers' enemies, as it states. Speech, it is a relative pronoun, as we see right here. Case, genitive. Number, it's singular, not plural. Gender, feminine, not masculine. All right. This means from whom, which means that this refers to one single female proceeding noun in Matthew 1 and 16. And there was only one feminine singular noun available, and that's not Joseph, who's masculine. So that only leaves Mary. So grammatically, Joseph is excluded. Joseph is masculine, which means grammatically, again, he's excluded. That's grammar, which don't lie. The pronoun cannot point to Joseph. Greek grammar don't allow it. So the text says from whom Jesus was born, not from whom they conceived, and not from Joseph. Now here's the kill shot. If this were not a virgin birth, the grammar would be different. You would expect a masculine or plural construction or an active verb of begatting, ganao, applied to Joseph, aka egenasin, which has the root word ganao, or the language identifying Joseph as the biological source. The grammar and language don't allow it. None of that is there. Instead, Matthew deliberately switches the grammar from active voice to passive voice. Active voice for every father up to Joseph for begat. Passive voice, egenete, for Jesus, meaning was born. Feminine singular source, Mary alone, which is the kill shot. And you just seen the screenshot, so you know I'm not lying. Greek grammar rules Joseph out as the biological father. Joseph is cut off from the actual Greek text. Mary is the sole human source, and Mary alone, which means she's the only one who supplied the flesh, aka according to the flesh. The verb is not active voice. It's passive voice. It's not sexual, not mutual, not biological through Joseph. The grammar proves it. The virgin birth, all right, that is the virgin birth, not doctrine, Greek syntax, Greek grammar. And another kill shot, back to Hebrews 2 and 16. So in Hebrews 2 and 16, he took on, that is known as middle or the passive deponent. And middle voice rescue verb cannot describe biological paternity. I'm gonna repeat that. A middle voice, see right here, middle voice right here. When y'all click on the word for he took on and Hebrews 2 and 16, a middle voice rescue verb cannot describe biological paternity. It can. It describes intentional action by the subject, not genetic transmission, Then it says, so it's closed casket after that. All right. It's closed casket after that, after seeing that middle or passive deponent. And that's indicative, aka facts, meaning it's a factual event. So now let me be sharper for you, brother. Hebrews 2:16, he took on Greek checkmate. All right. The verb epilebenetai, it is middle or passive deponent, as we see here, right? Indicative. That combination matters. The indicative mood states that a fact, not symbolism, not a metaphor. This is reporting what Christ actually did. Then we have here, right here, the middle passive deponent voice means that the subject is not biologically generating anything. It means taking hold of, assuming, entering into, not producing. So grammatically, Christ did not biologically originate. Christ took hold of human nature. He assumed the seed of Abraham or helped the seed of Abraham. He did not generate it through sexual means. If this were biological descent, the text would require active voice, a verb of begatting, and a human agent causing the action, i.e. in the active voice, and none of that is present. So Hebrews 2:16 shuts all of that down. Instead, the grammar says he took on, he assumed, or he entered into, or he rescued. This is incarnation language, not procreation language. Middle passive plus indicative equals divine action, factual statement, no human causation. The grammar closes the door for all non-virgin birth believers. They will ignore this though and go out in the streets next week and read Hebrews 2:16 and say, give me the definition of seed, sperma, sperm. Then if someone asks about the grammar, since they're twisting a concordance, then they get upset and dodge questions. He took on the seed of Abraham. It didn't say sperma. It says spermatos, a spermatos. There's a difference. Also, if you were to take this verse literally, when it says he took on him the seed of Abraham, then you're saying that Jesus was taking nut. And not only taking nut, but he was taking nut that's 2,000 years old. If you take this literally from y'all's perspective, then when it says he took on him the seed of Abraham, I would say he took on what? Pause. He took on the sperm of Abraham. What do you mean he was taking sperm from Abraham? You see how when you take a pass out of context, how silly it sounds? This shows again that seed means offspring. The object, right? We're dealing with Greek grammar. The seed of Abraham. Now watch how the grammar works together. All right. Epilebenetai, spermatos, Abraham. He takes on the seed of Abraham. Logical problem for the anti-virgin birth view. One, it did not say koite spermatos. It didn't say epilebenetai koite spermatos Abraham. It didn't say that. It didn't say that at all. So, if seed means literal sperm, then Jesus would be taking hold of sperm in the present tense for the purpose of help and rescue. You see how grammatically that doesn't even make sense? Again, it's going to go over a lot of your elders' head because again, this is the first time that they're learning things about Greek grammar. So the first thing I get it, they're going to shun us away. They're going to shun it away. And one day they're going to have to come and deal with this. So that's nonsense grammatically and conceptually. Instead, the root word sperma means descendants, covenant people, lineage class, those belonging to Abraham. This is not about literal sperm. One thing we do know is Mary is Abraham's descendant, Rebecca's seed. Genesis 3:15, the woman's seed. Keal shot number 3, the object seed of Abraham functions as a people group, not genetic material. I'm going to repeat that. When you say seed of Abraham, guess what? Grammatically, this is functioning as a group. All right. So you saying it's group sex? Because grammatically, that's what it's pointing to a group. Why translators say help and why they're right? You noticed something very important earlier. NIV, ESV, NLT, he helps. The NET version, his concern for. YLT, he lays hold of. That's not literal bias. It's semantic range, because epilabonatai plus genitive is commonly used for grabbing someone to rescue them, taking hold to save, intervening on the behalf of. You can compare that with these three scriptures here. Mark 8:23, Jesus take hold of the blind man. Acts 17:19, he took hold of Paul, not conceiving him. Hebrews 8:9, God took them by the hand and led them out. Remember, out of where? Out of Egypt. Remember that? Sure you do. None of these imply biology. None of these apply a man and woman laying down to conceive anybody. All imply intervention. Hebrews 2:16 cannot be teaching biological paternity because, again, the verb epilabonatai, epilabonomai, is a middle voice rescue verb. It is a middle voice rescue verb and is not a generative verb. Grammatically, it describes Christ deliberately taking hold of Abraham's descendants to help and redeem them, not conceived by sperm. If the author again meant biological generation, Greek has precise verbs for that, and none of them are used here. Or even shorter, ladies and gentlemen, you cannot get Joseph's sperm out of a middle voice rescue verb. The grammar won't allow it. The verse actually strengthens the virgin birth position instead of weakening it. Once the Greek is respected, once the Hebrew New Testament is respected. But again, your elders won't deal with any Greek grammar, although the New Testament comes from what? Greek. Hebrews 2:16 strengthens this instead of weakening this. Now circle back to Hebrews 2:16. We saw in that screenshot, it is a middle voice rescue verb. It is not a birth verb. It is not a genealogy verb. It is not a generation verb. So when Hebrews say he takes hold, meaning he helps the seed of Abraham, it means identification, help, rescue, covenant, solidarity. And again, it cannot mean sperm transmission, biological begetting, Joseph's paternity. Why? Because it's a different verb class, different voice, different function. If a non-virgin birth believer say Matthew 1:16 is passive, so Joseph must be the father, I say passive voice only tells you that a birth happened, not who caused it. Matthew 1:16 names the source as a feminine singular when you look at the word from whom, which grammatically excludes Joseph, because remember, Joseph is masculine. If Joseph was the biological father, the Greek will require either an active begetting verb or a masculine agent, and neither is present in Matthew 1:16. So we know Hebrews 2:16 is not about to contradict Matthew's statement. Then when you tell these people you finish with, the grammar does not just fail to support Joseph's paternity, it actually blocks it. Bottom line, plain, and I'm being firm with you. Passive voice don't equal Joseph as the father at all. It would have been active begetting. Passive plus feminine source, remember ex haste in Greek? That meant Mary alone. Hebrews 2:16 equals rescue, not reproduction. No Greek construction anywhere that assigns sperm to Joseph. I'm not stretching the text. I'm letting the grammar speaks. And it speaks very loudly and very clearly. So understand that all I'm doing is really letting the grammar talk to you all. I'm letting the grammar tell you what this means. All right. Remember what we learned earlier? Ugar, Dipo, Angalion, Epilabonatai, Alai, Spermatas, Avram, Epilabonatai. Literal gloss for surely not of angels he do take hold or he helps, right? But the seed of Abraham he takes hold or he helps. Grammatical breakdown. Epilabonatai, we have the verb, the root, epilabonomai. When we parse this word and break it down to its form, notice in the present tense. So notice you bet not be saying that sperm was sexual seed, because you'd be saying that he's taking sperm in the present tense. He's currently taking it. Think about that. This is how you know grammatically y'all doctrine don't add up. This is in present tense. Voice, middle, mood, indicative, person or number. Third person singular, meaning takes hold of, which means to help. To lay hold of in order to assist. Critical point. The verb never means to begat. to impregnate, to have sex, to conceive. It is a rescue help verb, not a procreative verb. So when you look at the word epilabonatai, it is not a procreative sexual verb. It is a rescue, help me verb. Same verb, family used for helping, grasping, rescue, or supporting. Sexual verbs in Greek are explicit. It is explicit. Gnosko or sunochromai, which is a sexual knowledge or coming together sexually. None are here, which means this has nothing to do with no Joseph being no biological father or not. Object phrase. Spermatos Avram. Spermatos is genitive singular of sperma. Seed, aka lineage, not sexual seed. How do we know? Because remember, it would have said koite spermatos or koite spermatos. Avram, which you know is Abraham. All right, it is a indeclinable proper noun. Genitive function. This is a genitive of category or identification, not sexual semen. And answers, just so you know, which group of people? Remember we talking about group? Man, we're like, are you saying this is a group sex thing? So when we look at the grammar, it tells which group and which people, not which sperm or which sexual act. All right, sperma is the root word, all right, in biblical Greek. But the word sperma is never recorded in Hebrews 2:16. It's spermatos. Y'all looking at the root word. It means offspring, descendants, covenant people, lineage class, not spermatozoa. All right, not spermatozoa. This is modern Greek or science of a physical sperm cell. Just so you know, if you see that word, but even then, that word is never recorded in the biblical Greek. Missing grammar. This is huge, ladies and gentlemen. What is not in the verse? There's no ek, which means source, or out of, or from. There is no ganao, which means begat. There is no there's no spermatozoa. There is no spermatozoa at all. There's no male agent. There's no sexual verb. There's no conception language. If Hebrews 2:16 was sexual, proving that a man and a woman laid down to conceive Christ, then the Greek requires. Listen to me. Somebody said requires. Requires. One more time. Somebody said requires. Requires. So if Hebrews 2 were a sexual passage, meaning that a man and woman laid down, or this was physical sperm, or he comes from Joseph, guess what? It would require a begatting verb or an explicit sexual construction, and Hebrews chapter 2 does not do that at all. There's no koite spermatos or spermatos. None are present. What is the sentence actually doing? Parallel contrast structure. So I made for you all. Clause A and clause B. Clause A, not angels, not angelic nature, not heavenly class. Clause B, but the seed of Abraham, human covenant lineage, earthly people. The entire verse answers one question only. Whom did Christ come to help? Answer, humans, Abraham's seed, not angels. Why Joseph cannot be the biological father grammatically. Hebrew and Greek and code meaning grammatically, the verb epilabonatai is non-sexual. They can't get around that. That's why they don't want to deal with the Greek language. How are y'all saying that this proves that Joseph is a biological father, but I'm reading this word here, epilabonatai? That's non-sexual. And why am I saying it is middle voice? That equals personal involvement in aid. No causative or procreative stem voice, stem of voice. This here alone shows that this ain't talking about no Joseph is the biological father at all. All right. Genitive. Remember that the genitive case? It does not mean biology. Spermatos Avram equals a covenant group. All right. That's what we talked about, group. Same logic as sons of the prophets or children of wrath. No sexual implication is there. No sexual implication unless a sexual verb appears, and it does not. Source, ek. Look at that. Don't mean sex. Even when ek spermatos appears elsewhere, like Romans 1 and 3, it still express origin category, not sexual mechanics. Hebrews 2 and 16 doesn't even include ek. Think about this, ladies and gentlemen. Modern, and look, this is why it's important to watch this series, because this right here I'm going over won't make a lick of sense to you. Why? Because you have already skipped steps, which means you don't understand proper Greek grammar at this point here. And you know somebody gonna skip this. I know it. Y'all hard-headed. So modern biology is being imported illegitimately. Seed equals sperm is modern. Seed equals sperm is modern. Biblical Greek does not work that way. The New Testament had words for sex and begetting and didn't use them. If you watch my other videos in the series, then you should remember what those words are and those words that are used. One sentence kills shot for you non-virgin birth believers. Hebrew chapter 2 verse 16. I know this finna go over your head again. It uses a middle voice or a passive deponent. It is a help verb, epilabonatai. It's a help verb, not a sexual one. It is a help verb with a genitive category phrase. Spermatos Avram contains no sexual begetting language. That's what you know as seed of Abraham. It contains no sexual or begetting language whatsoever, and therefore cannot grammatically or logically be used to argue Joseph's paternity. Hebrews 2 and 17, made like unto his brethren, or made like his brethren. A twist by saying, see, if he was made like his brethren, then he had to be born like them from a man's sperm. That proves that Joseph was the father. Wrong. Number one, I just proved that the verse before grammatically doesn't prove this false claim. So it's not getting around that. You still got to deal with the verse before that and deal with the grammar before that. Number two, the context tells you what made like unto his brothers mean. The context tells us, ladies and gentlemen. Let's read the verse carefully. Wherefore all things it behove him to be made like unto his brethren, that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest. Now, wherefore all things? What things? Not conception, not reproduction, not being made through Joseph's sperm. The grammar have already proved me correct already. The chapter already defined these things that he's talking about. Suffering, back in verse 10. Temptations, back in verse 18. Death, back in verse 9 through 14. Human weakness, verse 17. Mortality, verse 14. Being lower than angels, aka decreased. That's what that means, right? Aka decreased. All right. This is about his mission, not his biology, and not and lying and saying Joseph is the daddy. He had to A, feel pain, B, be tempted, C, die, etc. He had to bleed, suffer, intercede as high priest. That is what made him like his brother mean. Non-virgin birth believers took a spiritual verse about his suffering and turned into a biological verse about Joseph when Joseph isn't even mentioned here. The grammar even excludes him. So now let's talk about the Greek word for made. When it said made like unto his brethren. All right. So that's important. All right. Now we have homoiothe. I'm sorry, tongue twist. Homoiothene. All right. It has a th, like thing. All right. Homoiothene. All right. So this word means to be made like, to be made similar. In Hebrews 2 and 17, the phrase is essentially he had to be made like his brethren. That's incarnation language. All right, incarnation language, real humanity, not conception mechanics. How sperm works, not how sperm works, and not who the biological father is. Remember, Hebrews 2 and 16 grammatically excluded physical begatting there. So if someone tries to use this to sneak in normal conception, therefore Joseph, the response is the verb doesn't say begotten by Joseph. It doesn't use a begatting verb, genao, or a father agent construction. It's talking about likeness and shared human condition. So he can be a merciful high priest. Context is priesthood, suffering, temptation, death, not genealogy. The kill shot is how you block their move with grammar plus context. So if they're trying to argue that Joseph's biological father, well, grammatically, it excludes that. But they're not going to understand this because they don't understand Greek grammar and they do not accept something from a strong concordance when it goes against their doctrine. Here's a kill shot. Passive infinitive equals what? Result, state, not method. All right. It equals a result, state, not method. Homeotenai, same Greek word we just went over, is known as aorist, which is what? In the past. It is passive, and infinitive. It tells you what became true. He came to be like them. That's what this means. It does not specify how he became like them, as in normal sex versus virgin conception. The whole sentence tells you the category. Hebrews 2:16 gives the purpose, so that he might be a merciful and faithful high priest to make what? Reconciliation, sacrifice. That's about qualification for priestly meditation. Shared humanity, suffering death, aka the sacrifice, not about proving Joseph's biology. And all things is limited by the author's own theology or doctrine or his message. Got to use that for everybody. Y'all say different words. Hebrews itself insists he is like us in humanity and temptation, yet without sin though. That's why I put Hebrews 4:16 in there. So like his brothers in all things cannot mean an identical in every aspect. If you disagree, if you say it does, then you have to include sin. And you got to get rid of Hebrews 4:15. Because we are not pure as a people and we sin as a people. The Bible says in 1 John 1:8, if we say that we have no sin, we deceive ourselves and the truth is not in us. If we say that we have not sinned, we make him a liar and his word is not in us. So are you saying that all things is literally all things? Because if so, then Christ falls under that category too. And that's putting Christ in the same category if you argue that. Wherefore in all things it behoved him to be made like unto his brother, meaning in every aspect. You should have to include that as well, since you say he was made identically to us. So like his brothers in all things don't literally mean identical in every aspect, including sin. And by the same logic, it cannot be forced to mean identical conception method, sex either. Bottom line, Hebrews 2:16 use homoiotenai, to be made like. This speaks of Christ sharing human nature for priestly meditation. It does not describe conception, sperm, or Joseph. If you try to make it about birth mechanics, a man and woman laying down, you are changing the subject of the Greek grammar and ignoring the purpose clause. Made like, meaning what? Made similar, not made the exact same. Because the Bible tells us how he was made. Because again, homeotenai means to be made like, to be rendered similar. It answers what he became. It does not answer how conception happened, who the biological father is, versus if there is not a biological father, or in fact, if sperm was even involved. All right. Homeotenai does not do that. So when someone turns into birth mechanics, trying to say there was a man and woman laid down to conceive Christ, they're changing the subject of the verb. What verb would be addressed? What verb would address biological conception? Again, Greek has specific verbs for that. Genao, to begat a father. Tikto, to give birth. Genesis, birth of generation. When you look at that genao, it has to be in the active voice. If Hebrews were about Joseph's biology, one of those would appear. None of them do here. And you can't change Greek grammar. Matthew 1:16 proves it. Kill shot. Homoiotenai describes shared humanity, not shared sperm. Matthew tells us the source was through Mary and Mary alone. He was born of Mary, came from Mary. If conception were the point of this text, Greek grammar already has verbs for that. The Greek language already has verbiage for that in which he covered. That in which we've covered. And the writer, i.e. Matthew or Paul, did not use them anywhere. From Joseph being a father and Hebrews 2, it didn't use any sexual verbiage. It didn't use no procreating verbiage. None of that anywhere in Hebrews chapter 2. So let's put Hebrews 2 back into its actual context. The passage answers 4 questions, and none of them are about Joseph. Why did he take on flesh and blood? Why did he suffer? Why he was tempted? Why did he die? That's what Paul was talking about in his argument. The answers given by the text is simple. So he can be a merciful, faithful high priest. The contrast in Hebrews 2 is humanity versus angels, not biology versus virgin birth. The writer is saying Christ did not come as an angelic being, all right, at all. He came as a human being. That is the entire argument. Now here is where the confusion gets exposed. Virgin birth believers are not teaching that Christ came as an angel. That is a straw man's claim, right? And if someone tried to argue that angels cannot appear as humans, Hebrews itself even shut that down. Hebrews 13:2 simply plainly says that angels have appeared as human so convincingly that people are entertaining them without knowing. So the argument cannot be about appearance. It cannot be about physical realism, and it cannot be about physical sperm. Hebrews 2 is asking how Christ entered the world. It is declaring what category of being he entered as: human, not angel. When people try to use Hebrews chapter 2 to deny a supernatural conception, they're ripping the text out of context and they're messing up Greek grammar, even though they don't care about that, even though they should care about it. Why? Because we go back into the mindset of the author. Now we go line by line and present kill shots. Hebrews 2:16, nature of angels doctrine. Council will say, for verily he took down him the nature of angels, but he took on the seed of Abraham. He says, seed, natures of angels, no magical birth. God didn't do anything special. Problem. The King James wording here is unfortunate English. The Greek usually says something different. All right. Ugar depo, angelion, ebilabanatai, aulai, spiramatos, Avram, ebilabanatai. All right. That's what we got here. All right. So that word, keyword, ebilabanatai, all right, meaning take hold of, to help, to come to someone's aid, aka help, aka rescue. So the verse literally means, for surely he does not help angels, but he helps the seed of Abraham. That's literally what it says. It's about who he came to help, not how he was conceived. Think about it. What was just said. When you look at take hold of, right? Epilabanatai, it means to help, to come to someone's aid, to help. So it means surely he does not help angels, but he helps the seed of Abraham. It's about who he came to help, not how he was conceived. Nothing about Joseph. There's no sexual verb there. Then we have the word spermatos or spermatos. There's no koite or koitain at all. There's no spermatizo, meaning it's not a sexual encounter of verbiage mentioned. So this whole nature of angels, no magical birth argument is based on a translation Kirk, not on the Greek text, not on the flow of the chapter. Hebrews 2:16 is about who he helps. Hebrews 2:16 is about who he helps, not about how he was conceived. You all are building a doctrine on an English phrase that does not even match the Greek. That alone undercuts the entire foundation on that false doctrine. And you take it out of context. He took on him the seed of Abraham, right? Does seed equal sperm only? I've heard people say seed of Abraham equals sperm. So he must come from a man's seed. No virgin birth. Well, we answer from scripture. Seed, sperma, or in the Hebrew, zerah, equals descendants, offspring, or lineage. Now, remember, there was no koite spermatos, which means it's not talking about sexual seed. So that automatically debunks your claim already, because there's no sexual indicator there. There's no verb No verbiage there, and there's no sexual verb mentioned either. So in both testaments, seed very often means descendants, not semen. Genesis 12:7, to your seed will I give this land. That's not sperm, that's descendants. Genesis 17:17, I will establish my covenant between me and you and your seed after you. Zerah. Again, offspring, not bodily fluid. Acts chapter 3, in your seed shall all the families of the earth be blessed, according to Genesis 12. And 3, I believe. Peter quotes the same Abraham promise. Genesis 3:16, to Abraham and his seed were the promises made, and to your seed, which is Christ. Christ is the seed of Abraham without Joseph's sperm. Clearly, seed of Abraham equals belonging to Abraham's line, not semen from a male spouse. B, how can Yeshua be seed of Abraham without Joseph? Easy, because you get this all the time. Easy. Mary is physically the descendant of David and Abraham. Luke 3 shows the Davidic line through Nathan. Abraham is in that chain. Romans 1:3, he is the seed of David according to the flesh, meaning through his human nature. Through his human mother, Mary. How so? My answer is from the same Paul who wrote Galatians 4. Galatians 4:4. God sent forth his son, made of a woman, made under the law. That law is talking about Luke the 12th chapter. When a male child is born. We see the same thing in Luke 2, I believe it's 21. Showing that. Let me show you, hold on. Let me go there real quick. What's that, Luke? How about that chapter? I was 3. Chapter 2, I'll be 21. And when 8 days were accomplished for the circumcision of the child, his name was called Yeshua, or Jesus, which is so named of the angel before he was conceived in the womb. And when the days of her what? Purification, according to the law, see that, of Moses were accomplished, they brought him to Jerusalem to present him to the Lord. Remember Leviticus 12? It tells us right here, speaking to the children of Israel, saying, if a woman have conceived seed, Zerah, and born a man child, she should be unclean 7 days according to the days of her separation. That's for her infirmity. That's the purification. That's what it's going into. I've already talked about this in the series. So that's what I mean by that's what Paul meant by when he said made under the law. All right. So that being said, Galatians 4:4 is made of a woman. Luke 12. All right. So that means fully human in flesh, of Abraham's line through Mary, still conceived by the Holy Spirit. Seed of Abraham tells you who he belongs to, not what human man ejaculated. If seed must mean sperm every time, then Galatians 3:29. If you are Christ, then you are Abraham's seed. Are we literally Abraham's sperm? Of course not. They themselves read seed spiritually in other verses, so they can't suddenly force it to mean sperm in Hebrews 2:16. And again, Hebrews 2:16 grammatically blocks their doctrine because, again, Greek has specific verse for that. Genao, to begat or fathered. Tikto, to give birth. Genesens, in the active voice, birth, generation. We also have sexual indicators. Koite spermatos. We don't see that here. If Hebrews were about Joseph biology, one of those would appear. Made like unto his brothers. What does that actually mean? He leans on. All right. Wherefore, in all things behoved him to be made like unto his brethren. He says, see, he had to be born like you and me. No special birth, no virgin birth. We answer, look at the immediate context, not your philosophy. Hebrews 2:17-18 explains what like his brethren mean. Verse 14, since the children are sharers in flesh and blood, he himself likewise shared in the same. He became truly human with a real flesh and blood. Verse 17, he might be a merciful and high priest. He had to share our human condition to represent us. Verse 18, for in that he himself has suffered being tempted, he's able to help those who are tempted. He had to be tempted and suffer like us, like his brethren. He is truly human. He suffers. He is tempted. He dies. Not he must have a human father. He must be conceived in the same exact way as every person. No. Adam had no human father and was yet still fully human, tempted, capable of sinning, and did. Made of dust by a miracle. Also God's son. Also coming from the earth, which also was called a she. Genesis 4 and 11. Was also called a mother. Job chapter 1, 20 on down. Ecclesiasticus chapter 40 verse 1. So come on now. So different conception don't equal different nature. None of this is about Joseph being the biological father of Christ. This also contradicts what Matthew said, like if y'all saying non-virgin birth, because the Bible never said Joseph begat Christ in Matthew 1 and 16. It never said that one time in the Gospels. The Bible says of her, meaning Mary alone, and the grammar proves, but of Mary was born Jesus, not Joseph. Hebrews 7 and 16. Hebrews 7 and 16. All right. Hebrews 7 and 16 helps your case, you virgin birth believers, but not because of virgin birth proof text. It helps because it cuts the ground out from under biology equal authority thinking. Hebrews is saying Christ's priesthood and therefore his identity and authority is not grounded in flesh line rules, but indestructible life. All right. The Greek word made in Hebrews 7 and 16, all right, pronounced gegonian. It is perfect active indicative. Third singular. All right. So third singular from genomai. Genomai. So we have genomai pronounced genomai, to become or come to be or be made. So genomai means he has become, he has come to be, he has been constituted with results that stand. That's different from homoorthenai, to be made like or similar, that we read in Hebrews 2 and 16. That's different from epilabanatai, he takes hold or to help, meaning to rescue. Different Greek verbs, different jobs grammatically. The sharp point, not after the law of a carnal commandment. Remember what we read in Hebrews 7 and 16. All right. So first off, we have ukata namon. All right. Etoles, sarkines. All right. Meaning not according to the law of a fleshly requirement. Here's the no wiggle room point. This is not sex versus no sex. It's Levitical qualification language, priesthood, by flesh line descended rules, genealogy, tribe, ancestry. Hebrews is saying Christ did not become priest because of a flesh-based legal requirements, aka Levi, Aaron, lineage rules. So anyone trying to force Hebrews into Joseph's sperm mechanics is off topic. The other side, but after the power of an endless life, aulai, kata, dunamin, zoes, and then we have the word akatalutu, meaning but according to the power of an indestructible life. Sharp conclusion, endless life is not Joseph. Endless life is the Most High, which he is the son of. Indestructible life is not sperm, because you can literally wash that off with a rag. Come on now. That's resurrection divine life authority. The exact opposite of prove it by male biology. Hebrews 7 and 16. All right. Sound it out first. Aulai kata dunamin zoes aka tulutu. Meaning, but according to the power of indestructive life. Keal shot. Indestructible life is a resurrection category, not a bedroom category. Keal shot number 2. No sperm produces. Akatulutu, indestructible life. Keal shot number 3. Hebrews anchors Messiah and divine life power, not male biology. The verb made here, genyomen, from this word here, genomai, Keal shot number 1. Guess what? This word lets us know what? He has become, he has constituted, not was begotten by no Joseph. The next one, if Joseph's sperm were the point, you'd see a begatting verb, but we don't. Then when it says he was made after the power of an endless life, look up the word power. Dunamis, force, literally figuratively. Look at this, especially miraculous power. Used by implication, a miracle itself. Y'all see that? You love concordances. Why not use that? You got God, Christ being made from God, who is in endless life, eternal like his father. God. Joseph isn't eternal. God is. But it says power. And in that power, it was a miracle. It was miraculous. It was miraculous power. It was mighty. And Joseph's sperm ain't doing that. It ain't doing that. Galatians 4:4. Yes, it used the same word twice. Had to deal with this. Genomenon, ex gunekos. Genomenon, twice. Hopo, nomon. So literally, he became, having become from a woman, having become under the law. That's what we basically get there. The same word, right? Genomenon equals two facts about his coming. Source plus status. Keal shot 2. Paul gives you a woman as the human source maker. Ex, and in this word here, egunikos. See that? Egunikos, I'm sorry. Not Joseph. Keal shot 3. Then Paul gives you a law status marker. A law status marker. Huponomon. Not a father marker. Not a begetter marker. Not a sexual marker. Greek has verbs for that. Has sexual indicators for that. As I mentioned earlier. Keal shot number 4. Galatians tell you where he came from. Woman. And what condition he entered. Law. Talking about Leviticus 12. It does not hand Joseph biological credit. See that? Now we fuse Hebrews 7:16 plus Galatians 4:4, leave no wiggle room. Guess what? Genomenon says he truly entered humanity from a woman and entered the covenant legal realm under law. That's what we get from the Greek text. Hebrews 7:16 is priestly constitution, not grounded in flesh qualifications. Sarkines, but an indestructible. Akatalutu, and it was miraculous power. Joseph's semen don't qualify for that. Hebrews 2:16 again says nothing about man and woman laying down to conceive the Messiah. Another Keal shot. The woman equals the source. That's why the word ek was there. Law equals the status. Hupo, indestructible life, authority. Akatalutu, Joseph, nowhere. Camps keep yelling, seed is sperm. Hebrews answers indestructible life. That's checkmate. Joseph isn't endless. God is though. And then in Hebrews 2:16, it don't say sperma. That's the root word. Spermatos is the word. Spermatos is the word. So Hebrews, ladies and gentlemen, refuses to ground the Messiah in flesh rules from the perspective of Joseph. Camp doctrine depends on flesh rules, as I said earlier. Hebrew kills it at the root. What is the genitive in Greek grammar? In the word for endless in Hebrews 7:16, some may ask. If you look this up, you'll see it's genitive. Genitive answers questions. This is what I told you earlier. Remember what I talked about of what group, of what people? Seed of Abraham, remember that? Same thing here as I wrote. Of what kind? Belonging to what? Characterized by what? Source quality of what? It does not indicate action or mechanisms. It indicates nature, quality, or defining source. Now apply that directly to Hebrews 7 and 16? Huh? Zoes. Zoes akatalutu of indestructible life. So here's the grammar. Zoes, life. It's in the genitive singular form. Genitive singular form. All right. Akatalutu, indestructible. It's a genitive, adjective, modifying life. Indestructible. So the genitive is telling you what kind of life this is. Keal shot grammar base. The genitive here is qualitative. Qualitative, not biological. It defines the nature of the life, not the method of birth. Keal shot. The text does not say life produced by Joseph. It says life characterized as indestructible, which is the Most High. Another Keal shot. Sperm produces temporary life. Genitive, akatalutu, defines life that cannot be destroyed. Another Keal shot. No genitive of quality ever means this comes from a man's sperm. Grammatically, it would never mean that. It means his life belongs to the category of the eternal. Why does crushes the non-virgin birth move? If Hebrews wanted to argue biology, you would see a begatting verb, genao, in the active voice. You would see a male agent, i.e. would have been Joseph, or a genealogical genitive tied to Joseph. Yet instead, you don't see that. You see zoes, akatalutu, a quality of life genitive, pointing to resurrection or divine life power. That lets us know that God is the agent for Christ. Start with the word made in Hebrews 7 and 16. Gegonen, verb, is in the second person active voice indicative, third person singular, from genomai, which means to become, come to be instituted. What this means? Second perfect, it equals a completed act with a present ongoing result. That's when we've seen here, when y'all look that up. Active voice, the subject is actively constituted by an agent. And guess what? Joseph ain't there. But here's the key. Christ is the one who has become something, not the one doing the begetting. Keal shot number 1. Gegonen is not a begetting verb. It's not a sexual verb. If Joseph were the biological father or the biological agent, Greek would require genao, to beget, with Joseph as the grammatical subject. We would see koite spermatos. But guess what? We don't see that. That never happens and never will. You've compared that to Matthew 1 and 16. This is where you trap them non-virgin verb believers. Eganete. When you look that up, it'll tell you it's aorist, meaning in the past. It's passive voice, not active voice. Meaning what? The recipient receives the action. The birth happened to him, not him causing it. Meaning him, meaning Joseph. Don't mean that. It is also indicative, meaning it's a factual event. So here, was born in the passive voice, not the active voice. Keal shot number 2, passive voice remove human agency unless the agent is explicitly stated. And Matthew does not say about Joseph, from Joseph, or Joseph begat. Instead, it says ex hes egenete, from whom Mary was born. Was born. The feminine singular grammatically excludes Joseph. Remember, he's masculine. Now you're bringing that back to Hebrews 7 and 16. This is where it all locks. Alai katai dunamin zoes akata lutu, meaning but according to the power of an indestructible life. Keal shot number 3. Indestructible life is a divine attribute, not a biological outcome. Sperm produces perishable life. All right. Akatalutu describes eternal death, defeating life. That points to God, not Joseph. The Greek word for power, dunamis. Strong's meaning, you quoted it very correctly earlier. Me being sarcastic, ladies and gentlemen. Miraculous power. And when I say earlier, I mean the last video. Miraculous power, mighty work, supernatural force, divine ability. Keal shot number 4. Keal shot number 4. Dunamis is the word used for miracles, resurrection, divine intervention. It is never used for sexual reproduction, male biology, sperm mechanics. Never. Let that sink in. Jesus has no dunamis. God does. Now connect the logic cleanly, and there's no wiggle room. You can say this exactly to the non-virgin birth believers. Matthew 1:16 uses passive voice egonete and deliberately removes Joseph as agent, naming only Mary as a source. Hebrews 7:16 uses active voice, gegenomen, but grounds Christ's constitution not in flesh law, not in male biology. Kata dunamin, zoes akatalutu. What we read here. All right. Kata. All right. I want you all to see this, ladies and gentlemen. I do. Kata dunamin. Here, ladies and gentlemen, we have literally no male agent. No male agent. I really want to slow down so you all can see this, ladies and gentlemen. Kata dunamin. Ace. Aka talutu, ladies and gentlemen. Divine, indestructible life. That agent can only be God. Final nuclear kill shot. One paragraph. So I want to leave you all with. Joseph never appears as an active begetter because Greek never assigns him a begatting verb. Matthew removes him with the passive egonete, while Hebrew grounds Christ's constitution in gegonin, not by flesh law, dunamis, which is miraculous power belonging to zoes akatulutu, indestructible eternal life. Eternal life is God's domain, not Joseph's biology, not his semen. And the grammar in the language seals it. C equals Joseph's sperma? Well, sperma is the root word in the text, such as Hebrews 2:16, Romans 1:3, etc. Modern scientific terms like spermatozoa are derived later in many biblical contexts. Sperma means offspring or lineage. The real issue is not biology versus non-biology. Greek does not ask, can this root word ever relate to biology? Greek asks, what does this word in this form, in this verse actually means? That's what spermatos and the verb usage decides everything. So, that being said, root word versus actual Bible word. Root dictionary form, i.e., Strong's concordance. I'm sorry about that. I'm taking a sip of my water. You hear me pause. I'm taking a sip of my water. That's what I've been doing. So, sperma, general meaning usage, C, offspring, descendants, or lineage. This is not a sentence. This is not contextual. This does not indicate action or mechanics. So let you know the word can't stand alone. The inflective form, anytime you see the inflective form, that's what's actually in the text. Remember, just in case, ladies and gentlemen, When we go to Hebrews 2 and 16. All right, here, spermatos. All right. Ugar, depo, angalion, epilabanatai, alai, spermatos. Notice it has the root word, sperma. That's the word you hear.
Strong's G 4690, sperma. Sperma.
But here's the word spermatois or spermatos, which is the actual word in the text, is also highlighted in yellow. Notice that's not the word there. So your camp elders is arguing this word here, and they're using it as a standalone root word. Don't even know it's a root word. They think it's a word in the actual text, and it's not. So they're using a word that stands alone. It has no sexual construction attached to it, which would have been koite, which is not here because it says alai, spermatos. But they're looking at the root word and not the actual inflected word. An inflected word is what the actual Greek Bible actually says. So anytime you hear them say sperma, they are incorrect. That is just a root word. So inflected form is what appears in the text. Spermatos, or spermatos, or spermatos. When you parse this word, break it down to the simpler form, is a noun. It's genitive singular. It answers of what or belonging to what. Excuse me. Belonging to what? Spermatos or spermatos, meaning of seed. Belonging to a lineage, associated with a descent. It does not mean sperm cell ejaculation of sexual fluid or seed of copulation. The tos in spermatos or spermatos marks the relationship, not the process and how it was done, ladies and gentlemen. How Greek signals sexual or procreative meaning. This is the Keal shot. This is what we should see in Hebrews 2 and 16 grammatically. Greek does have explicit words when sex or biological generation is intended. They're not subtle. You'll know. You have the word ganao, meaning to begat, to generate offspring, will be in the active voice, meaning this person actively done it. All right. Ganao, meaning to begat, once again, to generate offspring, used when a father produces a child. If Joseph was a biological father, that verb will appear. It's not in Romans 1 and 3. It's not in Hebrews 2 and 16. It is explicitly avoided in Matthew 1 and 16 because it goes from the active voice to a passive voice. It goes from active to a passive switch. All right. Spermatizo, to inseminate and plant seed. We don't see that in Hebrews 2 and 16. This verb directly expresses biological seed transfer, never used for Christ, never used with Davidic descent language. This word here, sunechromai, meaning to come together sexually. That's used in Matthew 1. Before they came together. Used clearly in sexual context. Before equals intercourse, absent from lineage passages. When scripture means sex, it uses this. All right. Gnosko, meaning to know sexually. It's an idiom. Use in explicit sexual context. Remember Matthew 1 and 25, and knew her not? Yeah. Or Adam knew Eve. All right. It never appears in Christ's lineage text when it talks about seed. Then we have koite, meaning bed, sexual bed, or seed of bed, when we have attached to the word spermatos. Intercourse is the context. When sex is meant, koite or koitain shows up. Never appears with spermatos in Romans or Hebrews. Meaning it never appears in Romans 1 and 3, Hebrews 2 and 16, 17, which means it wasn't talking about a sexual seed, which means it wasn't talking about no Joseph put his sperm in Mary. Grammatically, it contradicts the Bible. Your doctrine contradicts the Bible. So, what the text actually does, spermatos or spermatos, with no sexual verb, no male biological agent, no procreative action, the Greek reader understands, or those who understand Greek grammar, oh, it's not talking about physical sperm. This is talking about lineage, identity, or a covenant descent, not sexual mechanics. Greek grammar forces that conclusion. Listen to me. This is what your elders don't understand. The Greek grammar forces that conclusion. You can't come up with any other conclusion as if you understand Greek grammar and following Greek grammar rules, which predates your English. Why the sperma argument fails? People make two mistakes. as you know I've been talking about. They stop at the root word sperma. They ignore the inflected form that's what's actually in the Bible, spermatos or spermatos, and the verbs. That allows them to import modern biology, override grammar, which is absurd. Preach implication instead of the text. But Greek doesn't work like that. Roots give possibilities. Grammar gives the meanings. Sperma is a root word, ladies and gentlemen. Sperma is a root with a range of meanings. But spermatos or spermatos is the actual word written in the Greek Bible. And its grammar tells us this is lineage, not sexual fluid. When Greek means biological generation, it uses explicit verbs like gonao, or spermatizo, or koite spermatos, or sunechromai, or sexual nouns like koite or koitain. None of that appears in Romans 1 and 3 or Hebrews 2 and 16. None of that appears there. So when someone argues from the root word alone and ignores the actual grammar, the sexual indicators or the sexual verbs that will appear there, they're not explaining the actual scripture. They're being disingenuous. They're following a doctrine and they don't understand Greek grammar. That's why they won't touch Greek grammar, and that's why they'll talk trash. Oh, Greek, everybody know what the Greek. But your Bible comes from the Greek. Come on now. What language was Hebrews originally written in? English, Hebrew, or Greek? Always ask, what's the difference in Greek between sperma and spermatos or spermatos and koitain spermatos or koite spermatos? What's the difference? Then I pause because these ninjas need to soak that in. I need to soak that in. Because once they say sperma, you ask, what's the difference between sperma and spermatos and koite spermatos or spermatos? That's already going over their heads. If sperma already meant semen by itself, then why does the Greek ever need koite at all? Kill shot. Greek does not use sperma alone to mean ejaculation at all. Sexual semen requires. Somebody said requires. Sexual semen, meaning if we talk about the seed of Joseph in a sexual way, literal sperm, it requires the word koite in front of it. And the actual word would be spermatos or spermatos, which has the root word of sperma. So I have highlighted there. Why this sperma argument hits harder? Sperma, the root word equals seed, offspring, and lineage. Koite equals bed, sexual context. Koite spermatos equals the explicit sexual admission, which should be used when it comes to Joseph if he was the damn daddy. The Bible never uses this phrase. Another kill shot. Greek only uses semen from a man's penis when koite is attached. Without koite, sperma is not ejaculation from Joseph's penis. And that's why we don't see that in Hebrews. Even better kill shot question for Israelite concordance scholars. You always like to go into concordance. What's the difference in Greek once again between spermatos and koite spermatos? And how does that differ from the verb spermatizo? That's my next question to you all who don't believe in the virgin birth. Kill shot answer, no escape. In Greek, these expressions are not interchangeable and they do not communicate the same idea. Sperma, spermatos. Sperma is the root word with a general range of meanings. See offspring, lineage. Spermatos is the inflected genitive form actually written in the Greek Bible. Grammatically, spermatos means of seed or belonging to a lineage, not in a sexual fluid. This form does not describe sexual activity, fluid transfer, or biological mechanics such as physical semen. It describes identity, descent, or relationship. Koite spermatos, this is different. Koite means bed, specifically a special bed or intercourse context. All right, or an intercourse context. When paired with the Greek word spermatos or spermatois, Greek noun explicitly signals sexual meaning. This construction does communicate sexual context when you see these words together. This construction do not appear in the lineage passages people arguing from. Greek readers would immediately recognize koite spermatos or spermatos. They would know that this is talking about sex, which means if we see these constructed words, then Joseph by default would be the biological father. However, we don't see it, which means he's not. In Hebrew, we would see shikvat zerah, spermatizo. This is even clearer. All right. So, spermatizo is a verb. It means to inseminate, to implant seed, to generate biologically. If the text meant sperm fluid, physical insemination, biological transmission, this verb or one like it would appear. We would at least see something like that. Why this ends the argument. Israelite camps or groups, not just camps, but people who don't believe in the virgin birth, they isolate the root word sperma, preach it standing alone, meaning just the word sperma alone, that root word, and import modern biological ideas into that word or into that text. But that's not how Greek grammar works. That's not how the Greek Bible actually works. The Greek Bible does not speak in roots, meaning root words, sperma. It speaks in inflected forms inside grammar, spermatos or spermatos. And the actual word written is spermatos. The grammar tells the reader lineage, descendant, covenant identity, not sexual fluid. Again, Greek has clear ways to talk about sex and insemination, like the words koite and spermatizo. None of those appear here. Instead, we find spermatos, an inflected genitive noun that speaks of lineage, not biology. So when someone argues from the root word alone and ignores the actual Greek grammar, they're not reading the Greek text. They are forcing something into it that isn't written, and they're rewriting the Bible. Listen up, Hebrews. If you're a concordance scholar, i.e. you always run into that concordance to look up words, all right? If your concordance scholar elder keeps lying to you, here's how you test whether they actually understand what they actually understand about Greek grammar or only English word that it lists. Ask them these questions slowly, one at a time. Don't let them jump ahead. Don't let them preach. Make them answer the questions asked. So don't let them run from nothing. Question 1, the root versus the text. Keal shot. Elder, what is the grammatical difference in Greek between sperma and spermatos? And which one is actually written in the Greek Bible? Is it sperma or spermatos? Meaning in Hebrews 2:16 and Romans 1:3. I want you to pause, make them answer, and most of all, make them show you. It's a 99.9% chance they will look for an escape route of some sort. So don't expect them to address this grammatically. Keyword grammatically. This must be avoided in order for the doctrine to stand. So expect them to downplay the Greek text, which predates their English text. So you're gonna get some pushback from your elder on this. Trust me. You're gonna get some pushback. They're gonna dismiss it. Well, how can this be possible? And I just don't see how this. And no, this don't make sense if. Yeah. But address that grammar though, my boy. When you get done talking, address that. We can get to that later after we continue let this grammar talk. Because when you understand the grammar, you're going back into the mindset of the actual author himself. So expect a factual answer if they do answer truthfully, which we doubt, but we'll see. They'll say sperma is the root Strong's concordance form of the actual root word of the actual root word. But sperma is not in the Bible in Romans 1:3. This is just a root word. Spermatos is the inflected genitive form. Spermatos is what actually appears in the Greek text or the Greek Bible. This word actually tells you the actual meaning with no guessing. They should tell you that in this verse, spermatos is not connected to the Greek word koite. Once again, koite spermatos or spermatos should be the word if it meant Joseph was the biological father. Koite again means bed, specifically a sexual bed or an intercourse context. When paired with the words spermatos, Greek noun explicitly signals sexual meaning. This construction does communicate sexual content. This construction does not appear in the lineage passage people argue from. This isn't recorded in Hebrews 2:16, which means this isn't speaking on sexual semen from a man's penis. Greek readers or those who understand Greek grammar would immediately recognize both words constructed together, koite spermatos or spermatos. This again is talking about sex, which means if we see these constructed words, then Joseph by default is the biological father. However, we don't see it, which means that he's not. Spermatizo. This is even clearer. Spermatizo again is a verb. It means to assimilate, to implant seed, to generate biologically. If the text meant sperm fluid, physical insemination, biological transmission, this verb or one like it would appear. We would at least see something like this. If they can't answer this, they're not reading Greek or understanding Greek grammar. They are not being 100% truthful to you concerning seed in its proper context. Neither do they understand. Question number 2. What does the genitive do? Don't let them escape. What does the tos or tos ending in spermatos grammatically signal? Ask them that. Does it describe sexual action or does it describe relationship and lineage? Pause again. Let them answer without changing the topic or running from the question. Make them look it up if they don't know. Now the factual answer, genitive shows of or belonging to. It does not describe mechanics or fluid transfer, i.e. semen, which means your elders should rule out sexual semen in this case because Greek grammar just already ruled out sperm fluid. There's no escaping from this. They can't escape from that. Question number 3. What's the sexual verb kill shot? Elder. If the Greek text meant biological insemination or sperm fluid, why doesn't it use a sexual or a procreative verb like gonao, to begat in the active voice, or spermatizo, to assimilate, or senukromai, to have sexual relations, or koite spermatas, seed of bed, meaning someone laid down and had sex and the result is sexual semen? Why don't we see that? Why don't we see that? You got a right to ask them this. Be respectful as your elder. Be respectful though. But just remember, don't let them dodge. Make them answer. Allow them to answer. And if they don't know the answer, make them search for it at that moment. Make them fact check this. You fact check it as well. They will, more than likely, they will try to preach their way out of it. They're going to try to talk their way out of this one, my boy. They might establish fear tactics, make you feel as if you don't understand, or like you slow. You just ain't getting it. You listen to people on YouTube. They're going to make you feel as you don't understand. They're going to make you feel ashamed for even asking such a thing. They will push for the conversation to go in another direction that is big for them. Or they will say, well, look, if you want to sit there and believe in virgin birth, cool, but not me. These are all signs of dismissal of truth and deception. You run from that man. He literally showing you that truth don't matter and that his beliefs outweigh the truth. His beliefs outweigh the Greek text that predates your English text. Isn't that English translated from the Greek? Okay, well, when the Greek hit harder, since it's translated from it and English didn't even exist back then. If we go into Greek, aren't we going back and closer to what at least would have said back then? Right, Elder? So, again, you ask them, if the Greek text meant biological insemination of sperm fluid, why doesn't it use a sexual appropriative verb like gonao, spermatizo, Senukramai, Hote spermatas. Why? Why don't it use that? Which means to begat, to assimilate, to have sexual relations or seed of bed, meaning somebody had sex and it resulted in somebody releasing semen. The factual answer, they better say, Greek always signals sex explicitly. So this way we don't have to guess. What do you mean, elder? Because they would have used Hote spermatas, spermatizo, gonao in the active voice. That's how we would know. If your elder say that, good man. But then he had to stop teaching that Joseph is the biological father, and he had to start teaching the virgin birth. Red flags, silence here, or when you hear the silence, well, I'm not sure. Let me look it up. And meanwhile, you've been teaching Joseph the biological father, but you hear that I don't know. They go look it up online. Their face expression change. They hesitate or ask me what you mean. Why you ask that? What made you ask me that? Why are you talking? What are you talking about? Repeat that question as they looking into it. That equals checkmate. Looking for these signs, he doesn't know, but he will try to argue with you by telling you I'm wrong, or he disagrees with what I'm saying. Them the red flags. You've been lied to. Which one is in the text, elder? Sperma or spermatos in Hebrews 2:16? Which one is it? Question 4. If seed means sperm, objection right here. They are on the ropes. You say seed means sperm and sperm comes from man, right? Okay, then show me where in the Greek text uses koite, a sexual bed, and spermatizo, assimilation, or koite or koitain, spermatos. Show me that, elder. Or show me any verb describing sexual action, such as ganao in the active voice. Let them search. Factual results, these words do not appear in the Greek text. In them C's because they're trying to go to. And my bad, I don't know. Let me get back with you on this one. That's a good one, elders. Therefore, this text is not describing sperm fluid. English biology just grammatically got kicked out of the actual verse the moment they admit that. Question 5, root word abuse, final kill shot. Elder, why are we teaching doctrine from the root word sperma and it's not in the Bible? Why are we teaching from this root word sperma instead of the inflected word that's actually written in the Greek Bible, which is spermatos? When Greek meaning comes from grammar, not from standalone roots. If we're going to teach from a concordance and looking this word up, we should use the proper word from the actual Bible and not the root word, right, elder? Or do we take this root word out of context? This is the breaker. They will be cut and don't even realize it. This has gone over most of their heads and they won't be able to comprehend. So the next thing they'll say is, God gave it to us in a language in which we can understand. Excuse to dismiss the facts that's in front of them. Meanwhile, these are the same elders that'll tell you seed is sperm, give you Hebrew names, say shalom to you. Yet when you look it up and see how they twisted this word and call it out, it becomes an issue because you chose to ask questions about the actual context that they're using this Greek word sperma in, and its inflected form. You chose not to say sperma, but spermatos or spermatos. Forced admission. Elder, would you agree that using the concordance to isolate a root word while ignoring the inflected form and the verbs in the sentence allows someone to force meanings into the text that the Greek never states? If they say no, they admit they reject Greek grammar, and that tells you everything you need to know about them and their integrity. If they do this, then tell them to never use a concordance and never use a lexicon of any sort, never speak Hebrew or Greek words, don't let anything, don't look up anything. Don't ever look up anything ever. Not even the word shalom. Don't even say that, since grammar doesn't matter. Don't let them speak no Hebrew around you and none of that. Greek does not speak in root words such as sperma standing alone. It speaks in inflected forms inside of verses. Sperma is the root with multiple possibilities. Spermatos or spermatois is the word actually written in the Greek text. It tells us this is lineage, not sexual fluid, which means your elder needs to know and grammatically understand the difference. If not, do not listen to him when he talk about seed or sperm, because he don't even understand Greek grammar, and he is taking that out of context and applying his modern biology understanding and showing you this is sperm, this is sperm. Greek has clear words for sexual and insemination, and none of them appears in Hebrews 2 and 16. None of them appears in Romans 1 and 3. So if an elder teaches seed equals sperm from a concordance without grammar, he is not explaining scripture. He is overriding it. He ain't got that authority to do that. He got authority over you, but he ain't got authority to do that. A concordance tell you what a word can mean in a general sense, because it gives you a wide range of possible meanings. Actual Hebrew and actual Greek grammar tells you what the word does mean in the sentence. That's the big difference. Resource versus the source. If your elder ignores the grammar on purpose, he is not interpreting the scripture. He isn't understanding the very resources such as concordances that he uses, that he abuses, that he quotes from. Your elder is rewriting the Bible and he doesn't have the authority. Once again, sperma is not spermatos, it's spermatois. In any case, it is one or the other. One is the root word listed in the concordance. The other is an inflected form actually written in the Greek Bible, in the Greek text. And that form supplies the contextual meaning of the root word, sperma, which has no sexual construction word attached to it, which would be koite. Ignoring that distinction is not scholarship, elders. It's misuse of the language, it's deception, using the concordance out of context, you being deceptive to your, deceitful to your followers. Will your elder stand on the side of the truth? We shall see. Why Hebrew and Greek grammar matters. Listen carefully. Understanding Greek and Hebrew grammar is not about sounding smart or showing off vocabulary. It's not about that. It's about going back to the mindset of the author. The biblical writers did not write in English. They wrote in Hebrew, Aramaic, and in Greek. And in those languages communicate meaning through grammar, not just definitions. Even the oldest 14th century Shemto Hebrew New Testament is before your Textus Receptus 16th century manuscript, which birthed your King James Bible. A dictionary or concordance can tell you what a word can mean in a general sense, overall sense, but Greek grammar, the Greek text tells you what the author meant when he actually wrote it. That's the difference. How grammar puts you at an advantage. When you understand Hebrew and Greek grammar, you are no longer guessing at overall meanings or possible meanings. You're no longer guessing at, well, this word can go with that one. I think I'm gonna take this word because I like this one. This meaning right here sounds better with my interpretation. When you understand Greek grammar, you can't do that anymore. So when you understand Hebrew and Greek grammar, you are no longer guessing at overall meanings. You are reading what the author actually wrote. You are reading the author's intentions. You're not guessing them. You're going back into the mindset of the author, what the author wrote, what he meant when he wrote that, not what you are inserting, not what you understand it to be. Ancient authors chose specific verb forms, specific cases, like genitive, etc. They shifted voice, past, active voice, and tense on purpose, aorist. They arranged words intentionally, syntax. They gave you signals to know that's sexual semen, that's lineage. How do I know? Because of what I'm reading here. If you look up a concordance and you see the word standing alone, you're going to get caught up. These authors were not careless. So when you understand verb tense, voice meaning active versus passive or middle deponent, the case meaning genitive, nominator was the noun, accusative, or syntax, the order of the words, the structure of the words, you're not adding the meaning. You're not adding the meaning. That's active voice. You're receiving the meaning, which would be passive because you're receiving. You're in the receiving end. So guess what, ladies and gentlemen? When you understand the grammar, you're not adding meanings to the text. You are receiving the meaning. Why translators depend on grammar? Good translators don't translate word from word. I'm going to say that again. Yes, a good translator don't translate word from word. They translate meaning for meaning. And meaning comes from grammar. All right? Not your Strong's Concordance. That is giving you a general meaning. When you go into the actual text and the actual grammar, that gives you the actual meaning, the actual intent. That's why the same Greek word can be translated different in different verses. Oh, well, this verse right here, it means this, and that verse, it meant this. You said it mean this, but right here, it's used 15 times here, and it meant that. The same Hebrew root can appear with different meanings, ladies and gentlemen. The translator isn't guessing. He's following the grammar the authors use. When you understand grammar yourself, you can see why the translator chose certain words. You can spot when English smooths something out. You can understand nuances without needing commentary. And you understand the intent and the thought pattern of the actual author, which means you don't have to guess any longer. Because the grammar tells you. The author tells you what he means. Here's the key point the elders you need to hear. When you understand Greek and Hebrew grammar, the author explains himself. So don't need your breakdowns. You don't need your wisdom. Because the author wrote it. You don't have to speculate. You don't have to import modern ideas. Sperma, that's sperm. You ain't got to do that because the Bible will tell you when it does that. You just got to go far beyond the concordance. You don't have to force meanings from a concordance when you understand Hebrew and Greek grammar. When you understand Hebrew and Greek grammar, you don't have to force a doctrine saying, well, Judah, in this verse, this word meant this, and in that verse, it also meant that. And so it must mean this also, right, Judah? You ain't got to do that. The author's verb voice, the author's sentence structure, syntax, the author's grammar already tells you who is acting, who is receiving, what kind of action it is, whether something is literal, figurative, relational, or functional. That's not interpretation. That's not doctrine. It's not my belief. That's reading comprehension. That's understanding grammar. Why does protect you elders from error when teaching? So you righteous elders that want to make the decision and say, you know what? This brother's right. Look, I don't understand grammar in Greek and Hebrew, but I can clearly see what he's showing me. This is definitely right. Well, I just looked it up. What's the difference between sperma and koite spermatos or spermatos? I can see the brothers right. I see that. This right here, listen up. When grammar is ignored, that means root words get preached instead of the actual sentence of the verses. So you will start hearing the elders, sperma, 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 sperma. But Hebrews 2:16 don't say sperma, sperma, sperma. Romans 1:3 don't say sperma, sperma, sperma. It says spermatos. And that word stand alone don't mean seed of admission, sexual seed. So when grammar is ignored, root word gets preached instead of the actual verses. Modern meanings get forced onto ancient words. False doctrine gets built on English sound alikes. Sperma sounds like sperm, so it's nut. But when grammar is respected, when you follow in the rules, lineage is not confused with biology. A metaphor is not confused with sexual mechanics, meaning meaning stays anchored to the text. This is why Serious study starts with grammar. It don't end with it. Concordances give you options. Grammar gives you intentions. Concordance gives you options. Grammar gives you intentions. Concordance will give you the root word, sperma. The grammar gives you spermatois. Different meaning, the intentional meaning. When you understand Greek and Hebrew grammar, you are not depending on someone else's explanation. You are listening to the author explain himself in his own language. That's the advantage. That's the protection. And that's why grammar matters. This keeps you from being called out by your students. All right? It keeps you from getting called out by your students. Look, y'all. If you're going to use a concordance, use it properly. Tell your students, that's it, sperma. That don't. When that word stands alone, it don't mean what we think it means. And if you're going to use a concordance, again, use it properly. You need to be telling them why koite or koitain is not there. Why spermatozoa is not there. And if you're not going to tell them that, you're deceiving them. You're going to get called out by your students. They're going to want to know what I'm talking about. Now, again, some of them are going to watch this and they're going to think I'm crazy. But they're going to want to know how to combat this. When out on the street, somebody going to ask them this. And they're going to want to know, well, how do we deal with this? Do we just tell them, oh, well, we ain't dealing with that? And then we're like, yo, but you're going to a concordance. You use other sources. They're going to start pointing out the hypocrisy. I'm telling you. So, elders, you might want to be honest and at least go and learn this Greek or this Greek grammar and learn how Hebrew grammar works. And you can see if I'm telling the truth or not. So, Hebrew question that I make them answer. All right, this next. What is the difference between zera and shikvat? All right. What difference was that? Then I'll follow up with, if zera already means sperm by itself, then why does it need shikvat at all? Keal shot. Hebrew does not describe semen with zera alone. Sexual seed is shikvat zera. Remember, once again, in Leviticus chapter 15, verse 16, and Va'ish if tizeh mimeno. So, and if a man go out from him, shikvat, and that's the word zera. That word standing alone don't mean semen. It has a method which connected to this word. Shikvat, which lets me know what kind of seed that it is. So, going back, now that you understand that, here, Hebrew does not describe semen with zera or zera alone. Sexual seed is shikvat zera. That rule is needed to be understood before verses. So, elders, you better understand that. We must agree on the language rule first. In both Greek and Hebrew, sexual semen is only indicated when special words are added. Plain seed, meaning by itself, when it stands alone, which is zera or spermatas, that just means offspring, lineage, unless copulation language appears. So when you sperma, well, what word is attached to it? Is that the root word? Is that the inflected word as well? Now look, if they're honest, they'll say yes. Once they do, they finish. And of course, they will not answer this. So never expect it. Pride will not allow it. If they say no, they basically deny his own Bible's original language of the New Testament. Then you ask me, show me one verse about Jesus' birth that uses koite in Greek or shikvat in Hebrew. Show me that. Keal shot, they can't, because scripture never uses sexual seed lineage for Christ's birth. Not once ever. One line closer. Remember this, brothers. Greek and Hebrew both have precise words for sexual semen, and scripture refuses to use them when it's speaking of Christ. Seed of David is lineage language, not ejaculation language. Mary fits the grammar, Joseph never enters it. And that's how you set the table before the meal. They don't even know it. It's going to hit them spiritually. So I ask you, elders, plainly, why don't we see this language in scripture when it comes to Christ's birth? Why does Matthew 1:16 grammatically exclude Joseph from being the father? Because you can't disprove Matthew 1:16 grammatically, and you can't argue your so-called semen sperma logic into a doctrine that claims Joseph was a biological father. The argument dies at the grammar alone. That's why they don't want to deal with the grammar. Now, next, I will say shortly, but I'm going to change that to next. Next, we will cover Acts 2:30, and we will continue this Sperma series, crushing one lie at a time. And we will show you how groups are misleading you. We will show that, and how they do not understand Hebrew and Greek grammar. They don't understand that. And remember this: when you understand biblical and Greek, or biblical Greek and biblical Hebrew grammar, you're going back into the original intent of the actual author. That puts you at an advantage because now you don't have to guess what the author meant. Concordances give you general meanings by listing a wide ranges of possible definitions, but the grammar tells you the actual intent. The grammar tells you the actual intent and thought process of the author. There is a big difference when you understand this fully. And if you don't understand this or refuse to accept this, then you cannot argue anything about the seed doctrine. You cannot argue who's the biological father, because you don't understand the basis of biblical grammar, because you're rewriting the Bible and don't even know it. Don't even know it. Let's pause there and think about that for a second. You don't even know it. Now that you've thought about that, all right, food for thought for elders. To reject Greek grammar while using a concordance to fit your narrative is dangerous. It's dangerous. Let me tell you why. A concordance does not exist on its own. It does not float in midair. It does not outrank the text. A concordance is derived from the Greek and the Hebrew text, not the other way around. It is a tool, not an authority. So when someone says we don't deal with Greek, but then turns right around and argue from a Greek concordance, well, that's a contradiction. You cannot reject the language and then use the very tools that were built from that language. There's a difference between the resource, Strong's Concordance, and the source. So where the concordance come from, as far as the languages go. Now let's go deeper. The New Testament of the King James Bible comes from what's known as Textus Receptus, which is a 16th century Greek manuscript. That ain't no opinion, that's historical fact. So when you all are looking here, ladies and gentlemen, all right, when you go to Hebrews, right, 2:16, right, your elder going there. So we have Tugar, Depu, Angalion, Epibanatai, Aulai, Spiramatas, Avram, tongue twist, Epilabamatai. And you see this word Spiramatas, or Spirmatois, and you don't see sperma there because your elder lying. We see the root word of sperma, but this says spermatois. So you see the root word, but not the inflected word. Notice what it says above this Greek text right here. Textus Receptus. That's this Greek manuscript that you're reading from, that these words come from, that these concordances give you overall meaning. Here. So when we see here, and look, even right here, him, the nature of, that's not even in the Greek text. That's why there's nothing right there. But your elder may not know that though. But check it. Even the word him. Now, what I was about to show, the seed part. You click right here. All right. Now, genitive, singular noun. Neuter, I mean. So here, you get to see the grammatical parts. All right. See that? Spermatoris, sperma. And then they go here. Sperma. You see sperm. Well, hold on. Why are we taking this out of context? That's the root word, general meanings. So, elders, y'all better be aware of this, because somebody gonna call you out on this. And actually, well, why is there no sexual marker there? Why does it say I'll lie spermatos right there? Instead of quotain spermatos, or spermatos. Why is that? Well, there's a right or wrong answer to that, elders, and you better know the answer. So, that being said, ladies and gentlemen, without Textus Receptus, there is no King James New Testament. And without the Textus Receptus, there is no Strong's Concordance. So if you're rejecting the Greek grammar, then if you reject the Greek grammar that you just learned, you're not rejecting me. You're rejecting the very textual foundation your New Testament actually comes from. Many of you hold the King James Version in very high regard, and for good reason. But you cannot claim to honor the King James Bible while rejecting the same Greek text that birthed it. It's your origins. It's the father of the King James Version as far as the New Testament goes. If you reject the same grammar that translated your Bible, then you're rejecting the Bible. It don't work like that, huh? If you ever say I don't deal with the Greek, I'd rather not deal with the Greek or Greek grammar, or Greek grammar and Greek don't matter, or you're rejecting what you see in the Greek grammar, guess what? You have no business arguing the virgin birth from the New Testament, because the New Testament was written in Greek, preserved in Greek, and translated from Greek, aka your Textus Receptus. You can't tell somebody that seed means sperma, and you don't even understand how grammatically you're wrong. And if you fail to want to learn that, then guess what? Don't use the concordance at all, because it teaches against your doctrine. Once we expose that you were using it improperly. And let me make something plain to you elders, and you so-called elders of One West Council. Look, this ain't personal though. But if you use the Strong's Concordance at all to prove your seed sperma stands, you don't get to avoid the Greek grammar. We have every right to question you on that. Since you want to go to Greek, okay, we're going to adjust the Greek grammar. You can't get mad if I ask you a question regarding the same Greek grammar that predates your the English for better clarification of the meaning of the word contained in the English text. Every English word in that New Testament, Strong's Concordance, comes from Textus Receptus. So you can't get mad if you're challenged on something that your text, that you're taking out of context. You can't get upset or bothered when I ask you a question and want you to explain from the very concordance that you use in debates, lessons, breakdowns, and study guides. Come on now, don't be no hypocrite, y'all. If you're going to use a tool, Strong Concordance, and I'm going to the source of that tool, Greek New Testament, Textus Receptus, then you can't get mad. You're going to a source that explains what's in the Greek manuscript grammatically, right? No Textus Receptus equals no Strong's Concordance. No Strong's Concordance equals no root word arguments, no seed according to the flesh arguments, no sperma arguments, no proving your point, and never pick up a concordance again or anything that traces back to Textus Receptus. Put the New Testament down then. Don't argue the root word like sperma from a concordance without being prepared for someone to ask you for the inflected word that's actually written in the Greek Bible. Ask you to explain the grammar, and don't get mad they ask you why you ignoring the verse in favor of a word list from a grammatical standpoint of the Greek Bible. And you cannot respond by saying we don't deal with the Greek or that don't matter, or change the topic, or ask a question with a question, answer a question with a question. That excuse is invalid. And at that point, you're arguing beliefs, not the facts. Again, I'm going to the source, and while you using a resource, because the Greek text, not your feelings, gave you the New Testament that you claim to believe in. Your Strong's Concordance gave you the understanding of words, even though you abuse the concordance. So if you reject the Greek grammar, you're rejecting the Greek text, the Textus Receptus, the foundation of the New Testament. and of course the King James Version Bible. And the very tools you use to argue in the first place. And at that point, you might as well put the Bible down, because you cannot reject the source of something and still claim to stand on it. I better not ever see you using the Strong's Concordance in a debate, discussion, or lessons. Greek grammar matters. Your Bible was birthed from it. The Greek text matters. Your Bible was birthed from it. No concordance equals no Greek Bible. No Textus Receptus. So, no Greek Bible, no Textus Receptus equals no concordance. And your feelings and what your elders taught you do not override Greek grammar, Greek manuscripts at all. Or Hebrew grammar. I put Greek grammar twice. Elders, food for thought, to reject grammar and don't want to explain Matthew 1:16. Egenesin, begat, is active voice, and egenete, which is the Greek word for in its passive voice, and don't know the difference between active voice and passive voice, and you don't know the difference, but you reject the virgin birth. Not only are you disingenuous, you are rejecting the Bible. No more concordances, no more lexicons, no more Thayer's Greek manuscripts, no more Liddell Scott's Greek English lexicon, no more the new Greek English lexicon, no more the new Greek New Testament Textus Receptus. No more of it. It's hypocritical and bad, and it's a bad look for you elders. I ain't gonna hold you. Whether you believe in the virgin birth or not, hey, put the concordance down. It's a bad look for you. Bad look for you. And it will come off to some people that maybe you have an agenda. Maybe. Just maybe. I don't know, but maybe. I don't know for sure, but maybe. If you hear and see elders using a concordance and other biblical tools to help you get a better understanding, and then they downplay those who are going into the actual language to also help you get an even deeper understanding, and they brush it off like it means nothing, that shows you it's an agenda at play here. It's an agenda at play. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to stop it here. And what I'm going to do is next, we're going to go to Acts 2:30 next. All right. Now, let me show you real quick. Acts chapter 2, verse 29 and 30. All right. Men and brother, let me freely speak to you of the patriarch David, that he is both dead and buried, and his sepulchre is with us unto this day. Therefore, being a prophet, knowing that God hath sworn an oath to him, that of the fruit of his loins, according to the flesh, he would raise up Christ to sit on his throne. All right. So that being said, ladies and gentlemen, we will cover Acts 2:30 next. Remember, there are different parts to this series. Remember, I did part 1 right here. Then I did part 2. Part 3, part 4, part 5, part 6, part 7, part 8, part 9, part 10, part 11. And this one right here you're watching is part 12. Part 12. To ignore the Greek grammar, to ignore the inflected word that's actually in the Greek text, and then trying to deal with the word sperma where it stands alone, but there's no koite spermatos. There is no spermatozo. You don't understand the difference between active voice and passive voice. You doing your followers a disservice. You can't go to Matthew 1 and explain Iako de egenesin ton Iosef ton Andra Marias exhes egenete Jesus ha lagamanas Christos, and you can't tell me the difference between why this right here says active voice for the word for begat right here when it says and Jacob begat Joseph. If you can't tell me the difference right here versus the word born when it says was born was egenete, and that's a verb, but that's passive voice. You can't tell me why this is active voice and why this is passive voice. You can't tell me egenesin is active voice and egenete, why that's passive voice. If you can't tell me the meaning of ex haste and tell me if it's masculine, if it's singular, etc., who grammatically applies to, don't use no concordance no more. Don't do it. Don't do it, because it's going to go against your doctrine. And now your followers know how to properly use a concordance. So every other scripture that we're going to be doing is going to get so much easier from here. We're not done with the seed series. There are other seed scriptures that they use. Acts 2, 29-30 is next.